Have you ever thought to yourself, I have a green thumb? Well, if you're anything like me, that lasted for about 30 seconds until you realize that your fiddle leaf fig has yellowing leaves and your monstera is covered in mold. Don't worry, you're not alone. And even though we all love our indoor plants, most of us end up killing them because we water them incorrectly. So in today's video, we'll talk about the best ways to avoid overwatering and underwatering your plants. Welcome back to our channel where we help you become the kind of plant parent that everyone wants to be. In this video, we're going to discuss the do's and don'ts when it comes to watering your indoor plants. We'll break down the signs of overwatering versus underwatering and share some of our top tips for making sure that your plants get just the right amount of water they need to thrive. And as always, we've got a couple of fun myths to bust along the way. So grab your favorite plant, get comfortable, and let's dive right in. Okay, so let's start off with overwatering. Overwatering is when you give your plant more water than it can handle. This happens really easily, especially if you're new to plant parenting. It's better to underwater than overwater, but either way, both can cause problems. So let's go over the signs of overwatering first, and then we'll get into the prevention. So the number one sign of overwatering is yellowing leaves. The reason why this happens is because your plant's roots are actually drowning. So instead of absorbing water, the roots end up burning and turning black. This causes the leaves to turn yellow and eventually fall off. Another sign of overwatering is if you see mold or fungus growing on the surface of the soil. You may also notice that the soil is constantly wet and soggy, which is a good indicator that you're watering too much. And finally, if you notice that the soil has started to pull away from the sides of the pot, that means there's excess water and it's actually rotting the sides of the pot. Now let's move on to underwatering. Underwater watering happens when you haven't watered your plant in a long enough period of time. This will cause your plant to wilt since the cells in a plant's tissue will lose turgor pressure. Another sign of underwater watering is if you notice that the tips of your plant's leaves are starting to turn brown and crispy. That means that the plant doesn't have enough water and it's drying out. Finally, if the soil is completely dry and pulls away from the sides of the pot, that's another sign that your plant needs water. Now that you know the signs of overwatering versus underwatering, let's talk about the best practices for watering your indoor plants. The first thing you want to do before watering any plant is checking the soil moisture. You can do this with a moisture meter or by simply sticking your finger inside the soil. If the top inch of soil feels dry, then it's time to water your plant. But if it feels moist, then you should wait a few more days before watering again. Next, let's talk about choosing the right pot. When selecting a container for your plant, it's important to ensure that it has several drainage holes to allow excess water to escape. This will prevent your plant from becoming waterlogged and help maintain healthy root systems. You can use a terracotta pot or a plastic pot with several bottom holes. Just make sure that the drainage holes aren't clogged so that the water can freely flow through. You can clean them out with a little brush or reamer if they're clogged. So how much should you water your plants? That depends on the type of plant you have and its environment. For example, tropical plants like to have consistently moist soil, whereas succulents prefer a drier environment. The frequency of watering will also depend on factors such as the size of the pot and the type of potting mix used. A well-draining mix will retain moisture for longer than a sandy mix, allowing you to water less frequently. However, it's crucial to monitor your plants closely to determine their specific needs. Overwatering can lead to root rot and other issues, so it's essential to avoid leaving plants in soggy conditions. And finally, let's talk about watering schedules. While it's helpful to establish a routine when it comes to watering your plants, it's important not to follow a schedule blindly. Instead, use a schedule as a guideline and always observe your plants closely. Adjust the watering frequency based on the specific needs of your plants and their environment. Remember that plants are living organisms and their water requirements may change over time due to factors like growth stage, weather conditions, and the season. By staying attentive to your plant's needs and adapting your watering schedule accordingly, you can ensure that your plants receive the optimal amount of water for their well-being and growth. And speaking of watering schedules, that brings us to our first myth. You may have heard that watering your plants in the morning is the best time. And while that's usually true, there isn't a strict rule when it comes to watering your plants. As long as you're paying attention to your plant's needs and adjusting your schedule accordingly, you should be fine. Let's move on to our second myth. Misting your plants is a great way to increase humidity, but it shouldn't replace watering your plants altogether. Misting the leaves with water may provide some hydration, but it won't adequately satisfy the thirst of your plant. And that leads us to our next tip. There are lots of tools out there to help you water your plants more effectively. Self-watering spikes are a great option for plants that like consistently moist soil. You can fill the spike with water and then place it in the soil. The spike will slowly release water into the soil over time, providing your plant with the hydration it needs. Another option is bottom watering. This involves placing the pot in a larger container filled with water. The plant will absorb water through the bottom of the pot and the excess will evaporate over time. You can also use a watering can with a long spout to water your plants more precisely. This can help you avoid wetting the leaves, which can prevent diseases. And finally, remember those moisture meters we mentioned earlier. They're actually really handy, and we recommend getting one for each of your plants so that you know exactly when they need to be watered. You may also want to consider grouping your plants together. This can create a microclimate that increases humidity levels, which can help prevent issues like dry air and underwater watering. Additionally, grouping plants together can provide visual interest and create a more inviting atmosphere in your space. Finally, let's talk about fertilizing. Using a fertilizer can help ensure that your plants have the necessary nutrients for healthy growth. However, it's important not to over-fertilize, as this can damage the roots and cause other issues. Follow the instructions on the fertilizer packaging carefully and adjust the amount accordingly based on your plant's specific needs and the type of fertilizer being used. Alright, now that you're a pro at watering your plants, let's quickly summarize everything we've learned. Overwatering can cause yellowing leaves, root rot, and mold growth. Underwater watering can result in wilting, dry and crispy leaves and soil pulling away from the pot. To avoid overwatering, check the soil moisture, use a pot with drainage holes, and follow a watering schedule while remaining flexible. To avoid underwatering, use a moisture meter. Water when the soil is dry and consider using watering spikes or bottom watering. Remember that each plant is unique and may require different watering techniques. Observing your plants closely and adjusting your approach as needed is crucial for their long-term health and well-being. Well, that's a wrap on our guide to watering indoor plants. We hope you found these tips helpful in ensuring that your plants stay happy and healthy. Proper watering is fundamental to thriving indoor plants, and we are thrilled that you're prioritizing their needs. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more weekly plant content. And hey, don't forget to share this video with your fellow plant enthusiasts so they can benefit from these tips too. Thanks for joining us, and happy planting.